I am representing the Garifuna. My presentation is going to be focused on the Garifuna, which can be also used as an indigenous, as well as for indigenous as well, since Garifuna people are indigenous in belief. Climate change affects everyone. It's a global problem that we all face. When it comes to indigenous knowledge, to combat climate change, we realize as indigenous people, we are not heard, we're undervalued, and we aren't taken into consideration. As you know, indigenous people are the keepers of the earth. We have been here, we are deeply connected to the lands that we live on. This study underscores the importance of indigenous knowledge within the Garifuna communities, specifically in Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. This study, we're documenting traditional environmental practices, evaluating their effectiveness in mitigating climate change and the impacts, and advocating for the integration of indigenous people. But before I start, I'll give you a brief history of the Garifuna people. The Garifuna people are descendants of West African, Arawak, and Carib ancestries. We were originally settled in the island of St. Vincent before we were forcibly exiled. Due to our exile, we created the Garifuna diaspora. Garifuna people are coastal people, so we are tied towards the land and the sea. So we migrated to the coastal area of Belize, Nicaragua, Honduras, and Guatemala. One of the unique things about the Garifuna people is that even though we were forcibly exiled, we still maintain our cultural identity. We try to preserve our language, our cultural beliefs, our spiritual beliefs, and our ties and knowledge to the land. So for this presentation, I will focus on 3 areas that we can contribute towards. One of the issues, the exclusion of indigenous voices from global climate discussion, leading to policies that often overlook the value contribution of indigenous knowledge to climate resilience. Indigenous knowledge, often referred to as traditional ecological knowledge, tech, is a cumulative body of knowledge, practices, and beliefs developed by indigenous people through their long-term interaction practices with the environment. The knowledge is dynamic and holistic, integrating cultural, spiritual, and practical aspects of living sustainably with nature. For the Garifuna people, the knowledge is reflected in our traditional practices, such as reforestation, home gardening, and the use of natural barriers against environmental hazards. Reforestation. In terms of reforestation, it is a traditional practice that we use, that is employed by Garifuna to restore degraded landscape to prevent soil erosion. In the community, we traditionally use this and variety of native tree species, such as mahogany tree and the cahoon tree, palm tree, to stabilize soil and provide resources for their communities. These trees not only is vital for preventing erosion, but also play a crucial role in supporting biodiversity. In a study on reforestation and soil erosion, this study was conducted by Central American University of Sustainable Development 2018 in Honduras, examined the impact of reforestation efforts led by the Garifuna community in the coastal region. The research found that native tree planting, particularly mangroves and other coastal species, significantly reduce soil erosion in the areas threatened by rising sea levels and heavy rains. The deep-rooted trees help stabilize soil, preventing landslides and water runoff. When it comes to my next topic is home gardening. Home gardening is something that we use not only to help us when we have a lack of resources and scarcity of food, but it also allows, it's something that the women would do, and it also allows us to have food security. This is something that is rooted in the Garifuna culture. These gardens, often located by the homes, include a diverse range of crops such as cassava, planted medicinal herbs. The gardens are designed to be resilient to environmental stressors, providing a reliable source of food and medicine even during times of environmental or economic hardship. Referencing a study on biodiversity in reforest area, a report published by the Environmental Conservation Institute in Belize, it states that highlighting the increase of biodiversity and the practice of home gardening, the Garifuna have replanted native trees. The study monitored flora and fauna over a 5-year period, documenting the return of bird species, mammals, and variety of plant species that have previously been declined due to deforestation. When it comes to natural barriers, in my country, we face a lot of coastal erosion, especially in the indigenous communities. One of the things that the Garifuna people used to do is that we try to protect the mangroves. We are sea people, so when it comes to fishing, we try not to overfish, and we try to protect our natural species. So we have long recognized the importance of natural barriers, such as mangroves and coral reefs. In protecting our coastal communities from storms, surges, and erosion, mangroves in particular serve as a natural buffer, observing the impact of waves and stabilizing the shoreline. The Garifuna have traditionally engaged in practices that support the health and resilience of these ecosystems, such as avoiding overfishing and protecting the mangrove forest from deforestation. One of the challenges that we face is that our young people often move away from the community. This allows them not to be tied to our traditional knowledge and have no connection to the land. So that caused us to have a decline in sharing our traditional knowledge to the young people. Another issue that we face as Indigenous people is the non-recognition of our lands, or land rights. Again, this is something that all Indigenous people face, that we have to go to court so that our government can acknowledge that we have rights tied to our lands, and we are land people, we're connected to our land. So if we don't have ownership to our land, how can we fight for our lands? And how can we protect our lands if our lands are not traditionally ours? Another issue is inclusion. We're always excluded from the global conversations. A lot of organizations, yes, they consult the Indigenous people, but do they take us, I feel that they use us as a check balance. We are something, we need a grant, let's click, we consult the Indigenous people. 1 year later, where's the information? How have you been? Where's the accountability? How have you helped the Indigenous people? We need more people who actually mean business to help Indigenous people incorporate our traditional knowledge in climate change, not just use us to get funding. I came up with 3 solutions: assisting capacity building for Indigenous people, for them to understand climate change, how they can get involved in these decision-making processes, and be included in policy advocacy. Also, collaborative research. It's good for us to have Indigenous knowledge, but we need the scientific data to back up what we're saying. So it would be good to collaborate with scientists for us to have the data that we can use to prove that Indigenous people have a lot of knowledge that can be used and implemented to fight climate change. Thank you.